I would consider Gutter Runners to be one of the worst 360 shooting infantry, if not the worst, but let's go ahead and take a look here. We've got this Wicked replay from Wicked. He's gone with a full-on Eshin-themed build, which should make some people happy. We've got a bunch of Death Runners, Deathmaster Snitch leading the way, of course. Got an Assassin and an Eshin Sorcerer. Yeah, what is this? 5 Death Runners, most likely. Ix's Triads as well. And Gutter Runners, only one with Poison, all 360 shooting version. And I think that's basically it for the Skaven. Very thematically, they're going up against the Elven Assassins, so to speak. The High Elven Assassins. A Lithanar here. He's got 2 Shadow Warriors and a Shadow Walkers, so we do get to compare at least 360 shooting infantry here. Shadow Warriors are maybe lower middle of that list. We'll get back to that in a second. White Lions. We've got Spearmen, Archers. Pretty fun stuff. Firecaster. Over in the corner there, some Reavers. My guess is he knew there was some kind of Eshin shenanigans incoming, but in fact, just all Vanguard right in the face. Death Runners are going to move up. So, Gutter Runners can come with Poison, but you do have to pay for the upgrade. What do you get for them? Well, 90 unit models does make them unique in this sort of class of 360 shooting. Ranged infantry, skirmishers, that is a lot of unit models, and what it means is they have much higher volume of fire. Now, they do have about half the ammunition of other similar units like Chameleon Skinks, Shadow Warriors, Shadow Walkers, quite a bit more ammunition as well, so that is one of their main weaknesses. They're pretty squishy, but here they're working with these Death Runners to easily beat back some Lyrian Reavers. Got a nice Burning Head, does rip through the actual real Eshin's Triads. Yep, this is the Doppelganger summon right there. And so far, I mean, the ones over on this flank are helping to push up, make their presence felt. I will be talking about the Slingers separately in another video, by the way, in case you're wondering what about the Slingers. But the Archer's going to be continued, they're going to be pursued, let's say that, by these very fast Skaven infantry. You can see a Deathmaster and his Assassin pushing up and through as well, so pretty good stuff. Got a major presence of Gutter Runners, but you can see when they get tangled up, even momentarily in combat rather, with these White Lions, they do take some damage. I mean, their stats really aren't great, considering they're supposedly more of like, a hybrid type infantry. Sort of comparable stats to something like Shadow Warriors are better because they're High Elves, but even something, again, like Chameleon Skinks or Deepwood Scouts, they have a similar enough stat profile. Here, the Armor Sundering will help them with their non-AP damage. Obviously, Weeping Blade is a 50% armor debuff, so if the armor is getting debuffed by these other Clan Eshin units, I mean, I believe Deathmaster Snitch also has that. So yeah, a lot of ways to get Weeping Blade now, and that will help Gutter Runners perform a little bit better, but still, they're not that great of hybrid units. I mean, they do have a lot of unit models, again, so they can kind of fight in a little bit better, I would say, in melee, but lacking the Poison baseline and having that be an upgrade you have to pay for is pretty tough. They did reduce the cost of the Poison version after the Poison nerf, but even still, Fire Mage here about to get assassinated by Snitch and his bro. Doppelganger Summon also runs in to try and bail them out, but Lithanar himself, danger close, still firing, probably giving away his own position, but that's just fine. Death Runners running all over the field, just chasing off everything, basically. And meanwhile, here in the center, the Gutter Runners do end up getting a little bit caught up in combat here, and I mean, they're really not super durable. High Elven Archers also shooting in. They have a little bit of physical resistance. It's, what, 20%, 30%? Which is substantial. They also have quite a bit more HP than, again, something like Chameleon Skinks, but still, they should not be construed as tanky. And sort of the price you pay for that extra HP and unit models, in my opinion, is not really worth it, especially considering this is maybe the real reason why they're the worst, is they have the worst range of any unit. The Chameleon Skinks are only technically, 10 range longer, I believe. We'll have to, again, double-check that after the fact, but really, a lot of this is coming down to Snitch and the Assassin and the Death Runners kind of beating everything up in melee, right? Like, the Gutter Runners are more just kind of here. Like, we'll take a look at their damage values after the fact, but kind of getting eaten up. Light cavalry charges will definitely do a number on them, and if you can keep them all kind of together in an overwhelming presence, the volume of fire can be pretty legit. And, you know, the kiting, unfortunately, is not as good. They do come with the snare nets, which is very much not a factor these days. I mean, 10% speed, 10% charge speed really isn't enough to make much of a difference. If you're stacking it with some other speed debuffs that the Skaven have access to, you know, Toxic Rain, maybe you do a Bless with Filth if they don't have poison damage, or if they do have poison damage, then you just get that, right? Which in and of itself has been nerfed, and as a result, I think, you know, probably more than ever, the snare nets and the poison are kind of, I'm not going to say useless, poison definitely is useful, but the snare nets are kind of useless, and the fact that you pay so much for them means that gun runners will just struggle to be cost effective in a lot of situations. I mean, of course, if you're playing Snitch in campaign and they have armor piercing damage, that's a whole different story, but we're just talking about multiplayer here. Speaking of multiplayer, I'm completely missing out on Snitch just getting canned here by something. I don't know how, but also Lithnar is running away. I guess this probably had something to do with these archers, maybe some fireball action here. Hard to say. Snitch is pretty squishy to fireball, but the guard runners are kind of forming up a little bit of a presence here, trying to generate some value shooting in on these spearmen. And, I mean, their shooting attacks are decent. If we take a look here at the poison version, 3 AP, 11 base damage is a decent enough spread. It's not amazing for a missile unit, but it's okay. And, yeah, their fire rate's pretty fast, but the lack of ammunition is a big deal. Like, you can see already, a lot of these units, which really haven't got set and firing in any kind of consistent way, have still just used up their ammunition incidentally, which is good, but then you come in and look at the values here, and like 53, so a little over half their unit models still remaining, and less than 500 value still, with just about, just over 500 now, with one shot remaining. Really, I mean, you have to use their ammunition on the right targets for them to get value from their ammunition, and they're very unlikely to get their value in melee, so I don't know. I really think that they could do with a slight melee stat buff, or else maybe give them a slight cost reduction just to make it so that they can pay for themselves easier. Yeah, not that... I mean, Skaven are in an interesting place overall in the meta right now. I kind of need to play some more games with them and see it. Probably mid-tier, probably solidly mid-tier. But, again, I need to kind of play a little bit more for myself and see. Right now, the Elves are still hanging on. Balance power very heavily in favor of the Skaven at this point, as Lithnar's just taken too much damage. Did they actually finish off Snitch? Snitch is still alive, just cowering in the forest here with his concealment bombs popped, so he'll be just fine. Burning Head should come in, finish off a lot of these infantry, does some really nice damage, but the one thing about Burning Head, like, yes, Burning Head is good against literally all Clan Eshin units, but that's if you can get them set in a line, which often, due to the kind of mobile nature of these builds, you cannot. But coming back to the damage values, you can see that the Death Runners pretty much carried the majority of the value in terms of actual units, and of course Ixchia's Triads being included in that, and the Gutter Runners got very little value, basically just being glorified ninja meat shields, so that's alright. Snitch himself actually didn't get much value at all, but the Assassin contributing quite well also. Lithnar is kind of similar situation, like his heroes outdo his own damage. Shadow Warriors, one of them pays for themselves. The Walkers and the other Shadow Warriors do not. They're a little bit too slow to stay away from the Eshin units. Some of the Archers, some of the Reavers do a great job as well. The infantry, as you would expect, against so many Death Runners. You know, actually the Spearmen do okay, which kind of surprises me a little bit. There's no large units whatsoever to deal with here, but I guess just the high enough defense. Probably they did get tangled up in the Death Runners, or sorry, the Gutter Runners at times. So, yeah, let's go ahead and just jump straight into comparisons here. You can see I've already kind of pulled them up as I was formulating my thoughts from before. So $750 is what you pay for regular Gutter Runners. And keep in mind, Deepwood Scouts are the best unit in this class, in my opinion. So comparing the best to the worst isn't necessarily totally fair. Wood Elves are supposed to have the best sort of missile infantry in the game, probably. I mean, the dwarfs are also up there, but sort of in terms of lore and everything, again, extra 30 unit models on the Gutter Runners is something to keep in mind as we're looking at this, but almost twice the ammunition, like 75% of the range, right? I mean, like, yeah, actually more than double the range, like, Same missile damage in terms of DPS. Obviously, the exact missile damage, considering Gutter Runners have a faster firing rate, is not the same. But kind of similar DPS output overall. That being said, of course, the extra unit models means the Gutter Runners in practice actually have a higher DPS. You just have to be up close. And again, the difference in ammunition is significant. That being said, the melee stats are a little bit interchangeable. The Gutter Runners are slightly better. They're also faster, which is quite nice. But Deepwood Scouts don't necessarily need to be as close, so you don't need as much speed, right, because they're longer range. The HP difference, again, very significant, and that is one place Gutter Runners shine, but is this worth an extra 50 points? For me, looking at a ranged unit, like, you know, ranged damage is and range itself are the two probably like primary attributes I'm going to be looking at, because in theory, if you're playing your cards right, your missile units shouldn't be in melee too much unless they're hybrid. That's kind of another discussion. But so paying for extra melee stats, it's sort of the Illyrian Reaver problem. Illyrian Reavers are very good, but they're a missile cavalry at the end of the day, and their missile output isn't that great, so you really have to use their melee stats to get the appropriate value from them. I really feel like that's pretty hard to do with the Gutter Runners. I don't know. Yeah, 825 for the poison version. We come in and compare to Chameleon Skinks. Again, a lot more unit models, a lot more HP for the Gutter Runners. But considering they're 175 points more, everything else is more or less interchangeable, right? Again, higher volume because of the more unit models, but a similar damage, but 14 more ammunition. Literally more than double the ammunition of Gutter Runners here for the Chameleon Skinks. 10 more range, so I was right about that. And more or less interchangeable melee stats. And also, note about resistances for a missile unit. Again, you don't want them caught up in melee, and if they are caught up in melee, in theory, you've made a mistake. Obviously, that's not how it works in practice a lot of the time, but sort of in theory, right? So the extra physical resistance for melee is actually worse than missile resistance, because these guys are likely to get countershot instead of, again, attacked in melee if everything is going how it should, which oftentimes it doesn't. It's still, though, I mean, low melee defense... HP per model, right, if you averaged it out, is probably maybe slightly higher, hard to say, but it's not that much higher, and if they start losing models very quickly, which they can, it's not going to be great. What is it, 30%? No, 20% physical resistance. Okay, so, yeah, I'd much rather have the 50%, 40% rather, missile resistance of Chameleon Skinks, and again, just the cheaper cost. So, what do you guys think? Am I being a little bit unfair to Gutter Runners, or do they need some kind of a buff? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.